Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming this evening. I'm Lisa Hostetler. I'm the curator of photographs here, and I'll be moderating tonight's discussion. Before I go any further, though, I want to thank the Photography Council, who is sponsoring this event, and I'd like to acknowledge the president of the Photography Council, Mel Tratine, who did a lot of work for this show. Thank you. And also Brooke Mulvaney and the events team who did all the logistics for the event. So thank you. You should not blame them for the title of this, however, which is all my fault. I'm not a very good title comer-upper with. But I've learned my lesson, and I promise to collaborate with others on coming up with titles in the future. I'd also like to just say a word. If you're interested in joining the Photography Council, we have some forms up here on the stage, so take a look at that and join us if you're interested. The topic of conversation today is contemporary photography and its multiplicity of formats, materials, and presentation techniques, all of which have gotten a lot more complex in the last 15 years. Artists are using photographs and cameras in all kinds of ways, and this is having a decisive impact on collecting, exhibiting, and conserving the actual art objects. For example, just a few of the formats in which we see photographs today include large single images face-mounted to plexiglass and hung on gallery walls, to installations of photographs that are tacked or taped up on the wall, to artist books or monographic publications, or even photocopies of photographs hung on Interstate 95 overpasses. And then there are traditional, relatively small-scaled, matted and framed photographs, plus everything in between. So we can see that there's really a lot of different kind of contexts and different ways of looking at and thinking about photographs which have ramifications for collecting and taking care of them. So the panel is going to explore these various various forms of photographs from a range of points of view. We have an artist, Zoe Strauss, who conceives and creates the photographs, a gallerist, Michael Foley, who sells these works, a collector and curator who acquires and creates artist books, Max Yela, and a conservator who then tries to deal with extending the longevity of all these things, and that's Nora Kennedy. So to begin, I've asked each panelist to give a short presentation on their perspective on these issues, and then we'll start a discussion where I'll ask the first few questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience for your questions. I'm going to introduce each panelist before they give their presentation. So I'm going to start with Zoe Strauss. She is a photo-based installation artist and photographer living and working in Philadelphia. She recently completed Under I-95, a 10-year-long project that culminated in an installation of photographs under Interstate 95 in South Philadelphia. Her work was included in the 2006 Whitney Biennial and was the subject of a solo exhibition at the Institute of Contemporary Art in Philadelphia that same year. In 2005, she was awarded a Pew Fellowship in the Arts, and she received a USA Gund Fellowship in 2007. Her first monograph, America, was published in 2008. Zoe is also the executive director of the Philadelphia Public Art Project, which she founded to give the citizens of Philadelphia access to art in their everyday lives. Please join me in welcoming Zoe Strauss.
Well, thanks for coming. So I'd first like to thank Mel for asking me to come, and I found that I was kind of an odd choice for this because, for the most part, I have no interest whatsoever in the photograph as a precious object. And so it seems as if I have very little relation to this in some ways. I just finished this 10-year-long project where I showed photographs under I-95 in South Philadelphia for 3 hours out of the year each year. And it was the same each year. It was from 2000 to 2010, and this is what the space was like. Underneath I-95 was about a block long and 2 blocks wide, on every available surface that was unmarked, either by pipe or construction work, there would be a photograph adhered to the pillar. And here's a map of how it worked. A block across and 2 blocks long. And at the bottom of each pillar, there was a chalked number, so if you wanted to buy a color photocopy for $5 up at the front, you were able to do so. And here's what it was like. 10 years. I'm out of my mind. So when I began the project, originally the photographs were color photocopies. The photographs were sent off to a lab that were 35 millimeter film, and I would send them off to be developed and then make a color photocopy from that print, and then that print would be adhering to the pillar. But as I got fancier and fancier, the prints became fairly high quality inkjet prints that were then laminated with an adhesive backing and a laminated front. So the exact same print would sell at my gallery for $800. And this was the same print that went up on the pillars. And this is how it was. So this is I-95 was the basis of, was the one project that I worked on for 10 years. I did a lot of other things, but they all came back to 95. That was the central piece. And all of the other things that I did were just details and ways of figuring out new order for underneath I-95. And so here was a show I had at the Wexler, and that was great, but it was still just kind of a detail, just a part of trying to figure out I-95. And these are prints that I showed in a gallery, and sometimes I'll show slideshows. There you go. But again, all of these things were just part of trying to figure out this one major project. And so these objects were not really kind of part of, they weren't part of the art world in terms of these objects being a commodification unto themselves. They were just part of this larger project. And that's how it just kept coming back to it. This, because I know this is Photography Council, so I'm going with this right now, which is very important. Here are the cameras I used, okay? Take a look at this. Here's the Canon Rebel, and then here's a photo I made with that. And then here's the Minolta Dimage, and here's one I made with that. Oh, and then here's the D70. Hello. And then here's the D300, which is what I have now. Oh, wait, but that's not what I made with that. I'm trying to give you an, here's one. I'm trying to give you an accurate. So for the most part, I really could not care any less. It's just that I really do not give a shit. It was just the best that I could afford at that moment. And within each of these cameras, I'm equally pleased with all of the results that have come out of them. They are limited in some ways, depending on the image in terms of blowing it up. I have no qualms about that. It's what it is, and I don't have any interest in hiding the technology that made it. So there you go. And this is it. This is my work. I just tossed this in for a little special note as I was going through the whole thing, which is, here's underneath 95. It's in my own neighborhood. Occasionally people who are my neighbors and who live close happen by, and this kid is a kid who I made this photograph of, who I didn't know. All the people I meet who are in these photographs are strangers when I meet them. And this was a photograph I made, and then 2 years later, he was just walking by from Target, and then he was like, dude, I'm in this picture. And here he was. His name's Mickey. Here's the book. Honestly, I'm just waiting for questions. Let me be perfectly honest. Because for the most part, I feel like part of this is that these images are all part of this very expansive and this ongoing body of work that's contained within this one decade. And so the idea of how they were able to be presented during the course of this was very interesting in thinking about how they moved about in the world. They moved about digitally, they went up in different exhibitions, but again, really the actual piece was for 3 hours this last May, and that was the entirety of it. And so while these are images that